Happy post Sukkot. We're in the post Sukkot pre-Thanksgiving season. We were supposed to be in the playoff season, but we don't want to talk about that because if we talk about a certain baseball team in Baltimore, Mr. Slam's going to make us say Tachlin out of depression. So we're just going to skip over that holiday we didn't get, and we will be like the Bali Musar, and we will be happy for the other teams in the league, maybe. But anyway, I give a lot of different talks to a lot of different kind of people on different subjects, and I'm being asked to speak next week on a topic I only spoke a drop about before, and that is Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes. You're thinking, that's nice. What in the world does Oliver Wendell Holmes have anything to do with anything Jewish? So the truth is he has a lot, and maybe we'll work on it one time. I originally got hooked onto him because I gave a number of lectures on Justice Louis D. Brandeis, Oliver Shalom, who was very, very close with Justice Holmes, and they concurred very, very often. That was my original connection with Oliver Wendell Holmes, with Justice Brandeis, who there's a lot to talk about. And then I recently found out that there was another connection. Oliver Wendell Holmes had a quote-unquote foster son named Lasky. He was a big man in the American scene at one point. A fellow Lasky, a Jewish fellow who had been rejected from his family, which is a whole story in itself. And Justice Holmes sort of adopted him, and they became like father and son in many ways. Oliver Wendell Holmes and his wife never had any children. But why are we bringing up Oliver Wendell Holmes to you? So I'll tell you why. Now, people love to fight about freedom of speech, right? And sometimes freedom of the speech, according to current definition, which we know changes from week to week, sometimes it's very, very good news for the Jews. Really, because freedom of speech will allow Jews to do all kinds of things. So sometimes a very liberal definition of freedom of speech can work very well for Jews. On the other hand, we know that in the world, once you start with definitions and you start changing them, it can go and go and go and go and go. And I'm sure everyone has experienced situations where you may have been affected or offended by freedom of speech, and you say, what? That can't be what the Founding Fathers meant. It'll go a little bit too far, and maybe sometimes it works against us. The biggest case you may remember, it became famous because of a movie with Danny Kaye, Oliver Shalom. You remember out in the Midwest, there was a Nazi parade in a town that had a high percent of Holocaust survivors. It really, really, really happened. And the Nazi people had a Jewish lawyer who was the child of Holocaust survivors, and he defended their right to march. Where was it, in Skokie, someplace like that? And it was freedom of speech. So freedom of speech can go in a lot of different areas. But I'll tell you why I bring this up. Oliver Wendell Holmes, no one will argue, was a brilliant, brilliant man. I guess that matches why he was friends with Brandeis. Two brilliant men over there. But most of his life, he had a very, very narrow definition of freedom of speech. And he condoned prosecution of all kinds of cases where nowadays would have been freedom of speech. Now, he wasn't quite like President John Adams with the Alien Sedition Act, and every time you say anything, you squeak against the government, you're going to get it, we're going to come after you. Wasn't quite that, but historically, Justice Wendell Holmes, throughout most of his life, most of his very intelligent, God-given life, he was very, very tight on freedom of speech. He would squash it, prosecuted many, many a person. Then one time, when he was much, much older, I think it was a train ride, he ran into a lower court judge, and they had a talk. They had a talk about freedom of speech, and from that one talk, Holmes began to think and talk and reevaluate, and this man who had a history, an intellectual history of having a very, very narrow definition of freedom of speech, from one conversation, one thing led to another, and he was a big enough man to be willing to change his mind. Now, would he approve of everything that goes on today? That's a big question. People love to fight about that. But the point of bringing out is, if you have a certain mindset, a certain way of doing things for a good part of your life, and especially if you're a very smart person and you know you're a very smart person, it's very, very hard to change and to make a new beginning. But that's what Justice Holmes was willing to do, and there are many books written in honor of him being able to have made that game change that late in life. And this was a man that had like a whole long list of court cases where he had said the opposite. It's a very, very big thing to do. As it is, we all know at least one person who's not willing to admit they're wrong, even when they're dead wrong, but to do something like Holmes did was a very, very big thing. I bring this up because the two partios we're starting the year with are about new beginnings. Big new beginnings. Big new beginnings. God creates the world. Adam and Eve aren't around that long. They mess up. New beginning. Leave the Garden of Eden. Got to start all over again. You mess up. First set of brothers. One kills the other. Mess up. Got to start all over again. And there were a number of mess ups with humanity and Parshas Bereishis. And, you would have thought, hey, we're the first people, we should call the shots. But there's a lot of new beginnings. Parshas Noach, we started reading on Shabbat, going to read it more tomorrow and the rest of the week. Parshas Noach, that's the tremendous beginning, right? God flushes out the whole planet, takes a few couples, starts all over again. And then later in the Parsha, you have the Tower of Babel, people mess up, got to start all over again. So right in the beginning of the Torah is teaching us, lahavdil, Justice Holmes' idea, that no matter how smart you think you are, no matter what you think you know, and even if you already did a whole bunch of things, that when this mindset, God's message is, sometimes you're going to have to make a new beginning. You're going to have to make some changes. I'm not saying God was wrong. I'm just saying that the people in the Torah realize, what? We messed up. We really, really thought we were right, but maybe we were wrong. So this is a good time of the year for everybody, and I include myself at the very top of the list because my wife says so, that a person sometimes has to look back and say, well, we just finished Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, starting a new Torah cycle reading. Is there anything I want to change? Oh, but I don't want to change anything because I'm always right. But the Torah says, now reevaluate. Maybe there's one or two things, and don't be afraid. And you pardon me for the secular example, everybody respects Judge Oliver Wendell Holmes. Everybody. Even the judges that didn't agree with him. So if an intelligent man like that could make such a game-changing decision, which changed world history, and say, you know what? I did what I did, but now I have a change of mind. I'm going to do a new beginning in my decisions. If he can do it, we can do it.
la 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 da da